Hello everybody, this is Tim Kreth, AD4CJ, and today's presentation is going to be about enhancing your experience with your HF transceiver, specifically how to maximize your signal reception and to get the most out of the very sensitive receiver that most modern transceivers have. We're going to cover several different topics, including the mechanics of truly fine-tuning your radio, how to zero beat phone signals and CW signals. We're going to talk about automatic gain control. We'll also talk about RF gain, which is probably the most misunderstood control on your radio. We'll talk about the use of preamps. We'll talk about attenuators. I'll also cover noise reducer circuits and noise blanker circuits. So we're going to talk specifically, how do you tune a frequency? We will specifically cover how to zero beat in CW. We'll also talk about how to zero beat a phone signal, and we'll have video demonstrations of both of these. You really want to avoid overly coarse tuning rates. You literally want to fine tune your radio. I've seen some hams that have set their tuning steps so coarse that very minor changes in the VFO knob can really move you right past the frequency that the DX station you're trying to work is listening to. So I've got some video coming up that is going to show us how to fine-tune a couple of different radios. And I'd like to thank Cliff N4CCB for shooting and editing all the video on this slide presentation. He did a great job. We're going to be looking at two different radios, a fairly new radio, an ICOM 7600, as well as an older radio, a Kenwood 570. So let's take a look at how to fine tune. Most radios have the ability to change the rate at which you can tune the frequencies. This radio is now set up to tune in 10 Hertz increments. If I hit the tune step button, I can now change it to where when I turn the knob it turns in 1 Hertz increments. Going back, I'm now back to 10 Hertz increments. And so what we're trying to do is literally fine-tune the radio. Okay, so this is the way we set the tuning rate on this particular Kenwood radio. If I hit fine, then fine shows up here, and I'm tuning in 1 Hertz increments slowly. So you see how slowly my hand is moving. If I turn the fine off, then it actually moves a lot faster. See that? And so if you really want to fine tune the radio, leave fine on this particular radio, and then we can tune it very carefully and fine tune it to where we want to go. Okay, so let's talk about how do we accurately tune or zero beat a CW station. Well, the first thing we're going to do is set the side tone pitch for our radio at a frequency that's comfortable for us, generally somewhere between 600 and 700 Hertz. I prefer about a 600 Hertz tone, so that's where my radio is set at. We're going to turn the transmitter function off. That is, we're going to disable transmit, or what they call break-in, or on some radios it's labeled as Vox, VOX. And then what we will do is send a series of dits while we will listen to the two tones. That is, the side tone my radio is generating and the tone of the CW pitch of the station that we're trying to work. As we tune and get them closer, when those two tones are exactly the same frequency, you are right on the DX station's frequency that they're transmitting and receiving on. You are zero beat. There's no heterodyne. Now what does that mean? Well, when you've got a couple of frequencies that are close together, say I'm using 600 Hertz and the DX station I'm tuning in, his pitch to me on my radio being received is at 650 Hertz, there's going to be some heterodyning, or that wah 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 sound. As they get closer together, then the frequency of that heterodyne, that wah 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 wah, will slow down. It will go wah wah wah, and then you'll finally get no beats between the two of them. So that's where the term zero beat comes from. So how do we accurately tune the CW station? Remember, the DX station may have a very narrow passband filter. For instance, if he's on the receiving end of a huge pileup, he may narrow his filters down to just 100 hertz. That means he's going to be listening just to 50 hertz below the frequency that he's dialed into and 50 hertz above the frequencies. So if you are 200 hertz off from where he's listening, you're going to be outside of his passband, and you could crank it all the way up to 1500 watts and have an 8-element Yagi pointed right at him, but he's not going to hear it because you are outside of his passband. Just like we said, if you're 200 hertz off, he may never hear you. We really want to go fishing where the fish are. So how do we accurately tune a sideband station? Well, we want to slowly tune up and down the band. We want to make sure that our tuning rate is not too coarse. Set it at a very fine rate, fine tune the station. As you approach the signal, it's going to start sounding like Donald Duck. Any of you that have listened to a sideband signal before know exactly what I'm talking about. As you continue to tune, the voice will start sounding normal. I want you to continue tuning in that particular direction until it starts to sound strange again. At that point, you know that you have gone past the 0 beat with the sideband station. Then reverse your tuning and return to a frequency at which it sounded normal. So let's take a look at what this looks like on these two radios. There's two ways of 0 beating. First is for sideband or phone, and the other way is for CW, as we know. So let's listen to a signal, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn until it starts sounding like Donald Duck, just like we talked about earlier. I'm going to continue turning until it sounds normal, and then I'll continue in the same direction until it starts sounding like Donald Duck again. Then I will reverse it until it sounds normal again. Not really even looking at the numbers as I tune, I'm just listening to the sound. So let's turn it up and listen. So now I'm reversing.
And the streets would dry out a little bit, and then we'd get a little bit. So we escaped.
That's how you 0 beat a phone signal.
The bad part of that, because it all went.
Now let's go down to the CW portion of the band. In order to 0 beat on CW, what we want to do is listen to what our side tone is supposed to be. And there it is. And we want the CW note of the receiving station to sound exactly the same. Same frequency. Same frequency. They're 0 beated. And in fact, if they're 0 beated and I go to reverse CW, which is like I am now, it'll sound the same on both sides. So here I'm CW normal, CW reverse. The note didn't change. I'm absolutely 0 beated with the station. Definitely will be in his passband. All right, to 0 beat CW, again, we're going to listen with our side tone. I've got Vox turned off, so we're not transmitting. I'll start bringing a signal in, see if I can hear one. There's one right there. So that's the tone I want to get. That's the tone that we want to listen to. Same tone. Right there. Then I could turn the Vox on and go. Okay, so the next thing we really want to look at is using our automatic gain control and RF gain, and that is using the right amplification. Don't just turn it all the way up. Unfortunately, a lot of the user's manuals for these radios don't really tell you how to really set the radio up for best reception. They just say that this is RF gain, it amplifies these signals, and so everybody sort of just turns it up to 11. Now, what do I mean turn it up to 11? Well, in the movie, This Is Spinal Tap, one of the characters in the movie talked about using their Marshall amps and how they had settings all the way up to 11 because it was one louder than 10. That really is not what we want to do to get the best reception. Most of our modern transceivers have a noise floor sensitivity of about minus 128 decibels. And on HF bands, atmospheric noise is usually much louder than that. In fact, the band noise will vary by frequency, by location. That is, are you in an urban environment, are you in a rural environment, or are you in a really quiet rural environment? And it also varies by the time of day. What we really want to do is to improve our signal-to-noise ratio. To be understandable, most sideband QSOs need to have about 10 decibels of signal-to-noise ratio. That is, the signal needs to be 10 decibels higher than the noise. On CW, we can get by with as little as 1 decibel of signal-to-noise ratio. So as we talk about this, we really need to understand what S units are all about. All of your modern transceivers have an S meter that we look at, and we've heard people saying, oh, you're 20 decibels over S9. Well, what exactly does that mean? The IARU agreed in 1981 that a signal of minus 73 decibels would be represented by S9 on your transceiver S meter, and that's supposed to be what they're set at. So let's take a look at S units. If we take a look at S9, we see it's minus 73 decibels. Let's go down and take a look at an S4 signal. An S4 signal is 30 decibels less than that. It's down to minus 103 decibels. And I want you to pay particular attention to that number, minus 103, particularly as we look at the next slide. The next slide is a graph of band noise versus frequency from the ARRL handbook. And if you take a look at 14 megahertz and look at that solid curve, which represents represents residential band noise in a typical residential location, which is, for instance, most of where our ham shacks are located, like here in Brentwood. And you'll see that the band noise, the atmospheric noise on 20 meters is minus 103 decibels. And that is an S4 band noise for 20 meters. And right there you can see there's 25 decibels of atmospheric noise compared to the noise floor. That is, if we think that the noise floor of the radio is minus 128 decibels, if this is 103 decibels, there are 25 decibels of atmospheric noise. So to reiterate, in a typical residential environment on 20 meters, atmospheric noise is minus 103 decibels. This represents an S4 noise level. That's an S4 noise just from atmospheric noise. What I really want you to do is not focus on the signal, but primarily focus on the signal-to-noise ratio. If your signal level is lower than the atmospheric noise, you will not be able to hear the station. And this is where RF gain and preamplifier all are really misunderstood. The preamplifier will amplify both the signal and the atmospheric noise. The RF gain will set the level at which amplification starts using the automatic gain control. If your desired signal is below the atmospheric noise, all of the amplification in the world you have is not going to make it intelligible. It's not going to change that signal-to-noise ratio. So let's focus on what's important. And what's important will be measures to improve your signal to noise ratio. It may require you to turn off the amplifier. It may actually require you to turn on attenuation. This is all counterintuitive, I know, but we'll give you some demonstrations that show you exactly how each of these things work. It will probably require you to back off of your RF gain from 100%. In fact, I usually keep my RF gain, depending on which radio I'm using, somewhere between 50% and 70%. Easily, this use of RF gain is the most misunderstood concept regarding HF signal reception. It is vitally important. So what are the factors that are going to maximize your signal to noise ratio? Well, the first thing is really going to be understanding and using AGC, or automatic gain control. And hand in hand with that is how to set the RF gain. On my software-defined radio, my Flex radio, they don't call it RF gain, they call it AGC threshold, and that's really what it is. And as we get through this presentation a little bit further, I think you'll understand what I'm talking about. A lot of times we're going to use attenuation rather than preamplification. And in fact, you really do want to avoid using your preamps on any band below 10 or 12 meters. You do not need any preamps there. 10 or 12 meters, very, very, very rarely you'll use preamps, but it's almost never, never, never will you use a preamp on anything below 12 meters. So to really understand this, we have to understand what automatic gain control is. And once I understood this, this was my epiphany. Automatic gain control is a compression amplifier. It is not a linear amplifier, it is a compression amplifier. What that means is we get lots of amplification when there is a weak signal, but when there's a very strong signal, we have very little amplification. The reason this occurs is the automatic gain control must take a really widely varying RF signal strength, for instance up to 80 decibels or 90 decibels coming into the front end of the radio, and convert it into only about 10 decibels of audio variance. So it's compressing the signal from 80 or 90 decibels coming in down to about only 10 decibels. And graphically, this is what it looks like. Over on the left side of the graph, at the start of the circuit in your radio, you may have 100 or 110 decibels of difference. And as you go through each of the steps, whether it's the bandpass filter, the RF amplifier, the first mixer, the second mixer, the IF amp, we finally get all the way over to the right side of the graph, and we see we only have about 10 decibels of difference between the strongest signal and the weakest signal. Now, you could do this with manual gain, but you'd have to be pretty quick with your hands. So what is the automatic gain control? Well, on radios, they can have variable time of recovery when a very little amplification occurs in the presence of a strong signal. So when we get a really strong signal, there's going to be very little amplification. When there's only weak signals present, we're going to have strong amplification of the signal. And the radio can be set to recover strong amplification either slowly or fast or medium. Now, what is automatic gain control? Well, most S meters actually are reflecting the current level of automatic gain control activity, not really how strong your signal is. In fact, on some radios, if you turn automatic gain control off, the S meter will stop working. So let's look at an example of automatic gain control, fast and slow, and see what happens with it. Most radios have the ability to change your automatic gain control decay, slow, medium, fast, or off. This particular radio has slow, medium, and fast. And what that does is it allows the AGC decay to either decay quickly between words or decay slowly between words. So if you're listening to a QSO on phone and you have it set at slow, then you're not going to hear atmospheric noise in between the words that are said. If you set it to fast, you will hear atmospheric noise because it decays really quickly. So let's take a listen to what this sounds like.
Miles an hour. and went through a wall. You can see a YouTube video.
We got it set on slow. Let's change it to fast.
In South Dakota. It took place about 10 years ago. But I lost a friend out there on the tower, and I don't do helicopters. What can I say? KC4LNX, K6AER.
Roger, copy that. Well, I can understand that. I can imagine being a technician inside that transmitter shack. And can you imagine seeing that occur? They don't really know what's going on outside. It's just one of the moments where you look at each other like,
now back to slow.
What just happened? But that reminds me. I was a retired firefighter. A department after I retired from, they had a case.
A lot less noise between words when we're on slow as compared to when we're on fast.
The pump operator, something went wrong.
Slow.
It wasn't in pump gear, it was in drive. The fire truck took off.
Fast.
And the only thing these firefighters inside saw that line shoot out of the house, nozzle and all. And that's almost kind of the same thing. For a minute there, you can't comprehend or register what just happened because it's never happened before.
AGC control on this radio is right here. It's either fast or slow. We only have those two choices. When I hit it, the fast sign goes off and it becomes slow. Turn it on, fast side is on. Let's listen to the difference.
Keeping you away from, we're finishing off a 3-season room, and I'm glad we picked the hottest day. It's probably about 90 degrees outside today.
And notice how the S meter moves pretty quickly when we're on fast.
What do you call it? The thermometer starts busting through the roof there. Yeah, our temperatures, we're doing the same. We're getting storms all around us, but no rain. It's dramatically lowered the temperatures about a good 30 degrees.
When the AGC is slow, when the decay is slow, you don't get as much noise between the words.
And watch it like a hawk. Over. Well, here it's pretty hot. We've been having storms every night, though.
Okay, so what is RF gain and how does it interact with AGC? Well, RF gain selects the level at which the AGC amplification starts. So when we have our RF gain all the way up to 100%, then AGC will start at the noise floor of the radio, that is generally minus 128 decibels. If we reduce our RF gain so that the S meter will show, say, an S4 level, then no amplification will occur at signals S4 or lower. So this is what's really, really important. If the atmospheric noise level is S4 and you reduce the RF gain so that the S meter shows S4, only signals louder than the atmospheric noise floor will be amplified. That is, the signals that we want to decode. We're going to start improving our signal to noise ratio. So let's take a look at it. This is that same curve that we looked at before of band noise versus frequency, and the little aquamarine colored curve represents a signal on 20 meters on 14 megahertz, and it's going up just above that S4 noise level, which is shown by the solid residential curve. The red line represents my RF gain. So when I had the RF gain at 100%, that red line would have been all the way down at the noise floor, that is minus 128 decibels. As I started backing off on the RF gain, that red line started moving up, and I set it at an S4 level. So what happens is nothing below the red line is going to be amplified. It's just going to come through its weak level, and only the stuff above the red line is going to be subject to amplification through the automatic gain control. So I'm not going to be amplifying any of the atmospheric noise that's there. I'm only going to be amplifying that little section of the signal that's above the red line, and which is the signal that I want to decode and to listen to. So if turning the RF gain down is good, why don't we turn it all the way down? Well, this is why. If I've, say, turn it to a level of S7 so that the red line moves up a little bit further, no automatic gain control will occur on anything below the red line. So if that signal I was trying to hear on 14 megahertz had another signal that was 6 or 8 or 10 decibels louder than it just next to it, that louder signal is going to really overwhelm the signal I'm trying to listen to because there's no automatic gain control attached to it. So you really want to set the RF gain to a level that is going to reduce atmospheric noise but not reduce your signal. Most of the time we want to use less than maximum RF gain, and we will adjust the volume using AF gain. So what we're going to want to do, as you'll see in the videos coming up, is we want to tune to a clear section where there's no signal going, and we hear this background white noise of the atmospheric noise. Then I'm going to start reducing the RF gain until that noise just barely begins to go away. And that's going to be the magic point for most of these radios. So let's take a listen and see what they sound like. The RF gain on the ICOM radio is the outer knob right here. The AF gain, the volume, is on the inside. And when the white dot is straight up and down, ICOM is a little bit different than other radios. Your RF gain is at 100%. If you turn it further to the right, then it actually becomes a squelch. If you turn it to the left from straight up and down, or 12 o'clock, then you'll start getting some reduction of your RF gain. So let's listen to the background noise. I'm going to turn this up a little bit, and I'm just going to reduce the RF gain until I just barely get to reduce the background noise a little bit. Right about there. Now let's tune a signal in and see if we can hear a signal here.
Didn't hear much of anything down there. CQ20 from the Battleship, New Jersey. This is NJ2BB.
So there's the Battleship, New Jersey, and I can actually, I'm going to actually reduce the RF gain just a little bit more. And you notice how the background noise, atmospheric noise, just sort of falls away. Now, notice that I've got the RF gain set to where it says S9. Let me reduce or bring the RF gain all the way back up, and you'll notice that there's not much of a signal there in terms of an S meter signal. So it's S1, S2. How about that? When he comes back, we'll listen to him again. It's S1 is, we're getting a little bit of interference, but let's listen to the Battleship, New Jersey come back again in a minute. There he is at about an S5. Let's reduce the RF gain a little bit. But there he is. I've improved my signal to noise ratio by reducing RF gain. RF gain on this radio is the outer knob here. I'm going to tune off of the frequency and then reduce the RF gain until I get rid of the background noise to hit that knee. So let's tune off the frequency a little bit. And let's bring up the RF, or bring up the audio frequency gain. So you hear the noise. I'm going to reduce the noise then with the RF gain. Now let's go back to the frequency that we were at. So there we go. So perfectly understandable, but I've reduced the background noise. Okay, so the next thing we want to talk about is preamplifiers. As I said before, on bands lower than 10 or 12 meters, preamplifiers are almost never needed. Basically, if you listen to a quiet part of the band and you can hear atmospheric noise, you do not need a preamplifier. So how do we pick out a signal? Remember, you've got to discern the signal from the noise. Amplifying the noise will not help you. When you use a preamplifier, you're amplifying the signal and amplifying the noise, and you're not changing the signal to noise ratio. Amplifying only the signal will help you. So let's talk about attenuators. Attenuators will reduce the signals that get amplified and get sent to your ears. They will reduce the atmospheric noise just as much as they'll reduce the signal. And usually these are very helpful on the low bands, 40, 60, 80, and 160 meters, to help reduce listener fatigue from the atmospheric noise. I think you're going to be really amazed at the video demonstration we're going to give you a little bit later. Additionally, attenuators might be really helpful in crowded band conditions when powerful stations are close to your operating frequency. Now, when might that occur? Well, during field day or at particular contests like the ARRL DX contest or during de-expeditions. So let's take a look at preamplifiers and attenuators in this next video. So we're listening on sideband right now, and I've got my preamp off, I've got the attenuator off, and we'll show you what both of those do. There's a pretty good station right now from Lithuania that's coming in really well, and I want to show you that it really doesn't make any difference if we turn the preamp on. All that will do is simply amplify the ambient noise, which is not what we want to do. So let's listen. Preamp and attenuation is off. Let's turn the preamp on and see if it makes any difference to be able to hear this Lithuanian station.
Lima Yankee 4 America. Sugar Quebec 6 Whiskey Echo 59.
So I've got two levels of preamp on.
Thanks, Lima Yankee 4 Alpha QRZ.
Now it's back off, and let's see if it's any difference from what we were...
India 7.
We couldn't tell any difference. All we did was amplify the background sound. Now, if we turn the attenuation on, we will reduce some of the interference coming in from atmospheric noise. And I want you to listen how it doesn't make any difference to his signal, but it does reduce the background noise as I add 6 decibels, then 12 decibels, then 18 decibels of attenuation. So let's listen again.
Lima Yankee 4 America QRZ.
Okay, so now I'm going to add 6 decibels.
Again?
You could hear him say again. We're at 6 decibels.
18BE, thanks, 59.
Let's add 12 decibels and see if it prevents us from being able to understand him.
Thank you, man. 73 L4 QRZ.
So that was 12 decibels of attenuation, still very understandable. Let's add 18 decibels of attenuation.
59.
That's 18 decibels of attenuation.
Mike Romeo.
Okay, the S meter isn't even moving, but we can perfectly understand him.
Okay, 1 DMR, also 59, thanks, QRZ.
And there's a station pretty close to him that actually I could filter that other station out totally by tightening up my filters a little bit. And so let's listen again. That's where'd he go? He'll be back in a minute. And that's with 18 decibels. Everybody could understand that totally. And we don't have any interference. You're not wearing your ears out. So the preamp on the Kenwood is turned on and off right here. We're going to listen to a QSO in progress, and you'll notice that I can't really hear it any better when I turn the preamp on. Really doesn't help because all we're doing is amplifying noise as well as the signal, and we're not changing the signal to noise ratio at all. Let's listen. Preamp on. Preamp off. On. Doesn't help me understand the station any better at all. Let's tune off to a fairly quiet part of the band and just listen to what it does to the noise now. Preamps off. On. Off. On. Off. The attenuator on this radio is turned on and off right here. There's an indicator when it's on, an indicator, and the indicator goes away when it's off. So let's listen to a QSO in progress and see what the attenuation does. It will simply reduce a lot of the background noise. It will also reduce any signals that are just off of our frequency that tend to maybe overwhelm the gain control on the radio.
And a nice signal for a mobile, over.
In the background you can hear that signal that's a little bit off frequency. It goes away when I turn the attenuator on, but let's see if we can still hear the station we're trying to work here. So he should come back in a second. He was talking to a mobile station. That interfering signal comes in loud.
good. Got that you were near Tupelo, Mississippi, and
can understand him perfectly.
Well. You took a little bit of a dive on me. You took a little bit of a dive.
Turn the attenuator off, and we'll hear that other. When I turn the attenuator off, we'll hear the offending signal that's a couple of kcs off from us come in a little bit louder. So when I turn the attenuator on, that signal that's a couple of kcs away is going to go away. Let's listen again.
Wired over.
Went away. Interfering. Went away.
Roger, 7-3, but thank you very much.
Okay, so now we want to talk about signal strength. And the thing that's important to remember is that the DX station you're working may have a much lower noise floor than you do. You're in a residential environment. You may have an S4 noise floor on 20 meters. The DX station may be on a remote island in the middle of the Pacific without any electrical man-made noise. There may not be any storms going on. And they may have an S0 or an S1 noise floor. And they may be able to hear you much better than you can hear them, even with really weak signals. That's one of the things as I'm tuning the band, I really listen for the weak signals because they usually indicate to me more interesting contacts. I have received true 599 reports on CW from DX stations when at my location I could hear them as a 537 at my location at best. It all has to do with what your local noise conditions are. So the next thing I want to talk about is going to be noise reducer circuits. Noise reducer circuits have algorithms that reduce random or non-correlated noise, that is sort of some of that atmospheric noise. And some radios have different noise reducer levels for both phone and CW. Let's take a look at a couple of noise reducing circuits and what they do. To activate the noise reducer on this radio, we just hit this button right here, NR, and it gets rid of the background noise with digital signal processing. So let's listen to it without the noise reducer on, and I'll turn the noise reducer on. You can hear how the background falls away. There it's off and on. The noise reducer is off. Noise reducer is on. So this is a station. Noise reducer's on, noise reducer's off. A lot more noisy. This radio has a noise reducer circuit. One of the noise reducers is set for phone, the other is set for CW. And we'll hear what it happens just when we're off of any station. We'll listen to just background noise and hear what it does to reduce the background noise. So there's your background noise. Really cuts the background noise out. Comes back. So that's for phone. So let's tune a station in and see what it sounds like. And there's a station pretty close to this one.
But anyway, great signal, but and of course I can't hear.
You can hear it gets rid of the background noise.
Cornell, you said that you thought.
Modern transceivers also have circuitry called noise blankers. And these noise blankers reduce repetitive or pulse noise, like noise from your automobile ignition or noise from electric fences that fire every half second or so. Unfortunately, we did not have a noise source like this to demonstrate when we were filming the videos, but I think everybody can understand what ignition noise sounds like, and this pop, 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 pop. That's what the noise blankers are designed for. And make sure you leave them off unless you've got that type of noise coming into your system. Otherwise, they're going to add some interference to the signal that you're listening to. So, in summary, what I'd like to do is remind you to very rarely use your preamps. Again, you don't want to use them for any bands lower than about 12 meters. The most important thing, if you would take home from this, is to reduce your RF gain from 100% to increase the AGC threshold. That is, tune to a quiet part of the band where there is no signal, and then start reducing the RF gain until the background noise just starts to disappear. That seems to be the magic point, and that's about where you need to keep your RF gain adjusted. Remember, it's going to change during the time of day. It will change by band because the noise level, atmospheric noise, changes dependent upon the frequency that you're at and the time of day. Consider using attenuators, particularly on 40, 60, 80, and 160 meters. Those are going to improve your signal to noise ratio. Remember the video that we showed you. And also remember, most modern transceivers are much more sensitive than atmospheric noise. They're very easily overloaded. You're going to use your noise reduction circuit for random noise, that's the white noise in the background, and turn on your noise blankers for pulse type of noise, that's the ignition noise. Well, that concludes the first part of this presentation. We will have a second presentation coming up that will talk about using passband filters, IF shift. We'll also talk about how to set up your microphone gain properly, how to set up compression rates properly, and how to really improve your transmitting portion of your HF experience. So for now, 73, good luck and good DX. This is Tim Kreth, 84CJ. Thanks a lot for watching.